Yo, what's going on, guys? Crispy Flakester, welcome to Extra Crispy. For today's video, we got a video by Austin Sweat titled The Most Embarrassing NBA Records of All Time for individual players. So I do think context matters, which is what we're looking for, as these are listed off here. I know, prime example, LeBron has the most turnovers of all time. Is that embarrassing? No, because we know his usage rate and just how much the basketball's in his hands in general, right? So, turnovers are bound to happen. I think John Stockton's number 4. So, let's check this out and see what these embarrassing records are.
We looked at the most embarrassing NBA records of current day players. Well, now we're doing this thing for all-time players.
Yes, sir.
The video links in the description, so go check it out.
Yeah, so those are about the most
This video,
turnovers from the other
I try
one.
not to repeat too many records that I've recently talked about, so if something's missing, that's probably why. But we have a lot of
something
pretty
new, something
bad
new.
ones, like the one held by NBA legend Jerry West. LeBron James gets a
Post
lot of
championship
disrespect these
losses
days for having a 4-6 finals record, going to the finals 10 times and only winning 4 of them. But that's far away from the worst single-player finals record of all time, because that belongs to Jerry, whose record is 1-8.
That is
He played
embarrassing.
9 different championship series and only won 1 of them. And of course, this was because he lost 6 straight in a row to Bill Russell and the Celtics.
And shout out to Bill Russell, obviously an NBA GOAT. Not the GOAT, but one of the NBA GOATs. I think there'd be multiple, tiers of GOATs in the NBA. But 1-8's horrible. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. When you are the logo of the NBA, and once again, I know context matters and everything like that, but to go 1-8 in the finals, I'm sorry. That's not acceptable.
But then when Bill retired and Wilt Chamberlain joined the Lakers, Jerry West and the team were finally able to win one for the first time in his career. And sadly for West, this is the record that will most likely
get into the
never be
finals that
broken
many
or
times.
close to again. But speaking of
It's
that
pretty
much
impressive,
losing,
so.
that brings us to the process 76ers, who set the all-time record for biggest losing streak in major sports history. And they lost 28 games in a row between the 2014 and 15 season.
Yo, is that Tony
Most of us
Rowan?
remember just how bad these teams
Rocco?
were and the amount of insanely bad records that they put up over this 5 or 6 year stretch.
Nerlens
But to
Noel
really
blocking
show
it.
In 2014,
Ish.
their leading scorer was Thaddeus Young, and in 2015, it was Tony Roten. But
Tony
you may also
Roten,
remember
man.
how in this video I mentioned that the 76ers had the longest single-season losing streak at 26 games. But that one was completely separate, but in the same exact 2014 season. That's how bad this team was. They set the record for worst.
Hey, they
single-season
trusted that
losing
process,
streak
though.
and the worst all-time losing streak in the same year. The 28 games started to end that year.
If you're going to be a bad basketball team, be the worst basketball team. That's some
When they lost
words
their
to
last
live by
10
right
games in
there.
a row, and it picked up the next when they lost their first 18 in a row, which is just hard to imagine how that's even really possible. But the Sacramento Kings know all about going long periods of time
drought.
without winning, because they currently hold the record for longest NBA championship drought in the history of the game. And them going 71 years without ever winning a title is one of the longest in
Can't
all
laugh,
of
I'm a Lions
history.
fan.
They've been around since the 1950s. They were one of the first NBA teams, and they've still never won a title, and still aren't even close with them holding the record for longest playoff drought in NBA history, which is currently at 16
Oh, damn,
years
so they got
and
both of
counting.
them.
Things are only
Okay.
getting worse for the Kings, and if you're on the team, you can almost guarantee that you won't be in the postseason. Now, everyone knows Charles Barkley.
Keegan
These days,
Murray
he
could be
spends
great.
most of his time making fun of other NBA players when they're having a bad night. But when it comes to shooting, he has no room to talk because he's the record holder for the all-time worst three-point percentage the game has ever seen at 26.6%.
Ever?
He shot over 2,000 threes in his career, and it just makes you really wonder why he kept shooting them so much. It was always a pretty
Shooter's gonna shoot, but 26% from 3 off 2,000 attempts?
much guaranteed miss. Maybe if he didn't shoot so many threes, he could have won a championship.
That's actually
because in the
infuriating.
playoffs, his shooting got even worse, dropping to 25% for his career, and it was 20.
Y'all Suns fans get, pissy watching him?
Finals and lost. And just to put things into perspective, Charles Barkley made 538 threes in all of his years in the NBA, while a guy like Trae Young made that many in just his first 3 seasons. Speaking of bad shooters, though, nobody has had a worse shooting night than Tim Hardaway did back in 1991, when he went 0 of 17 shooting from the field. This was actually in the middle of one of Hardaway's better seasons in the league. So it just goes to show that everyone has an off night eventually. But sadly for Tim, this one's been in the history books for quite a while and will probably continue to do so. If you ask him though, he was never too upset by it, because after the game he said,
Who in the NBA right now would you give the best chance to breaking that record? Going 0 for 18 in a game? Who would y'all think could do that?
Box score. I had to get an NBA record somehow. Another unintentional, infamous NBA record belongs to Kobe Bryant. Even though Kobe was a lot of people's favorite player, that didn't stop him from missing the most all-time shots in the history of the game.
Yeah,
He's number 1 in the category by over 1,000 with 14.
To me, that's one of those context ones where it's like, we know how many like shots Kobe was taking and everything, and you know,
481
you're gonna make a lot, you're gonna miss a lot.
Even though he's only 4th in all-time career attempts, and that's due to his pretty low 44% shooting from the field. But listen, this isn't super surprising or anything. If you knew Kobe and ever watched him play, it's pretty clear how he became the holder of this one. Now, the shortest career in the history of the game is definitely an embarrassing record.
I've seen this one.
Like, at least you made it. But the fact that James on Curry only played
James on Curry
barely even counts. And it happened when he was drafted by the Bulls, immediately sent to the D-League, and let go 1 year later.
Such an ironic last name.
An official NBA game. So the Clippers picked him up. 2 days later, he subbed into the final 3.9 seconds of that game off the bench.
James get on Curry.
2 more days later. And that was it. That was the end of his career. So yeah, pretty anticlimactic. After Michael Jordan ended his NBA career and left the Chicago Bulls, the team was terrible and really struggled to find themselves. But they were never worse than one night in 1998 when they set 2 all-time records within the three-point line era. For the worst shooting percentage in a game ever at 23.4%, and the least amount of points in a game at 49. It came at a 33-point loss to the Miami Heat, whereas a team the Bulls shot
be doing that in 1 quarter these days
from the field and 0 of 9 from 3. Like, I get having an off night, but this was something else. So it's really no surprise to anybody that they only won 13 games that year. It's probably also no surprise that Shaquille O'Neal holds the NBA record for most free throws in a single game without a make.
0 for 11?
Now, I'm not surprised it was Shaq, but I am pretty surprised that the record is only 11. I thought it would have been a little bit higher. But I mean, I guess that is kind of...
I mean, I could shoot 11 free throws right now, and I'll make at least 1 or 2 of them every single time. Every single time. You give me 11 shots, I will make 1 or 2 free throws every time. Unless I'm like in my 90s.
A lot to not make a single
Grandpa
one.
style,
Shaq
man.
Shot
Underhand.
on free throws, and at that rate, there was only a 0.05% chance that he would ever miss 11 straight. You'd think after 6 or 7 or so, he'd eventually make
one would roll in, bank in.
Terrible shooters in this game, some even worse than Shaq, that I maybe would have thought would have had this record in.
You know, in all fairness, though, I will say that he's not shooting them all at once. So, you know, you break it up into, like, you take 2 here, maybe you get an A1 right here, you miss that one. I could see potentially why that would alter it.
Someone
to
like
some
Dennis
extent.
Rodman or Ben Simmons. But hey, there's still time for Ben. Speaking of Bens though, and Bens that can't shoot, that brings us directly to Ben Wallace, who was an even worse free throw shooter than Shaq because he holds the record for all-time worst free throw percentage at 41%. In his best season ever, he shot 49%.
I still always am going to remember this with Big Ben Wallace when I got to meet him the one time. Literally, I got to like shoot baskets with him, you know, at the Little Caesars Arena. And this man was splashing threes like it was nobody's business. Top of the key, man, just knocking every damn shot down.
His worst, he shot 30. And it seems like you almost have to try to be this bad at shooting free throws, but it does make a little sense. Some of these guys that play at center have been big all their life. They grew up playing with their back to the basket, and especially
Big Ben got big ass biceps too. That's gotta affect the form. It's gotta affect the form.
Always back down defenders and shoot layups or dunk. Today it's a little different though, and most centers have to learn how to shoot or else they won't survive in the league. In general, it makes sense why he couldn't shoot the ball.
He'd be a stretch big today.
After a 10+ year career, how do you never get in the gym and just learn how to shoot at least a free throw? You know who else wasn't a good shooter? The 2013 Nuggets team that set the record for most threes in an NBA game without a make, going 0 of 22 from the three-point line.
That's pretty impressive as a team accomplishment.
This was just a couple of years before the league started going crazy with threes, and at the time they weren't nearly as important as they are today, which is why the Nuggets barely had any shooters on their team. And a starting 5 of Ty Lawson, Andre Iguodala, Danilo Gallinari, Kenneth Faried, and Kostas Koufos. So yeah, it's no wonder how this one happened, but there's so much to unpack here. The Nuggets actually ended up winning this game against the Portland Trail.
Oh, that's actually shocking within itself.
9 days earlier, going 0 of 20 from the three-point line in a game. And even crazier than that, not only did the Nuggets make no threes that night, but they also didn't even make a single jump shot until the final minute of the game. So how they won this one, I really have no idea. The record for most ejections in an NBA career belongs to Rasheed Wallace with 29. And it makes sense. He also holds the record for most technical.
We got Wallace Thompson 2 in the video, baby.
He had 373 total technicals in his career, so it's no wonder how he got ejected so many times. He was a great player in his day. It's just crazy to think about though, because if he put it into perspective, second all-time in ejections is DeMarcus Cousins, but he only has 15. And we know how much of a hothead he was. So for Rasheed to have been not much worse than a guy like Cousins is just wild. And with the new rules in today's game, he just wouldn't have survived. And probably
some of his tees were BS.
Preseason with some of the calls the refs make now. Jason Kidd was quite the player himself back in his prime, but he too holds an embarrassing NBA record for most turnovers in a single NBA game game with 14. And that's just about as many as entire teams commit in one game. If it was going to be anyone though, it makes sense that it was the second all-time leader in assists. Because if you have the ball in your hand that much every single game, then you're bound to have 1 or 2 games like this. It's just rough because the rest of the team that night combined for 14 turnovers themselves. So in total, they had 28 on the night, which made it obviously that they
Who were they playing,
because
Detroit?
You're not going to win a game like that. For Jason though, this game was actually a part of a quadruple double because he also put up 18 points, 12 rebounds, and 10 assists. So hey, at least there's that. Now the worst team in a single season is often referred to as
Bobcats.
the 2012 Charlotte Bobcats, who went 7-59 with a 10.6 winning percentage. But the 1973 76ers were maybe even worse. They only have a slightly better winning percentage at 10.9%, but they weren't playing in a lockout, so their record was 9-73. They lost 73 games in 1 year. So what the Warriors did with wins, they did with losing. And they lost 14 more games than the 2012 Charlotte Bobcats and only won 2 extra. So even though the Bobcats hold the record for worst winning percentage, I think the 73 76ers may still have been the worst team ever. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe.
All right, that's all we got. Yeah, some of those I have not heard of, so that's pretty damn impressive. That's all we got. Thank you all so much for watching, and peace out, my friends.